Okay, y'all. So, here's why I decided to do the pepper steak and the beef kind of in the same, the picadillo beef kind of in the same sequence. All this lovely flavor and whatnot that cooked onto this pan, left over from the picadillo beef, we're going to use this to cook in the pepper steak so we don't have to add any more oil necessarily. So, what we're going to do is bring this pan, blow this nice little juices back up to like a medium-high heat. Push all this extraness down off the side so it gets down to the bottom of the pan. And we're going to start with all those vegetables we sliced up earlier. So the white onion that I specifically cut up for the steak, the slices of the red onion with a little bit of the cubes left, and the green and red pepper rings. Now, this is reminiscent of a dish my mother used to cook when I was younger. She would do it all in a crock pot just so she could start it and just chop everything up and leave it in and cook it down. And she would use like cube steak. But I'm using the shaved steak because I may want to make sandwiches out of this. I may want to put it in a wrap or something. So it's a little bit more maneuverable and has a little bit more versatility. So we're going to put this all in here and then put a lid on it and let this cook down. So, now that it's been cooking for a little bit, we're going to stir it around, see how everything's starting to get all wilty and aromatic. Now, different than when we did the picadillo beef, we're actually going to use butter in this. The reason why we're going to use butter is we want this to start to almost build a sauce for us once we add the steak, so we need a little bit of fat for that to give it some color and some browning. So we're going to put about roughly 1.5 tablespoons of butter in here and let that cook down so there's some fat for the steak to cook in once we add it. We're just going to stir that so everything starts to come together. We'll also start to caramelize the vegetables to give it a little bit of flavor. I use salted sweet cream butter just because I like the taste. Some people like to cook with unsalted butter or just regular salted butter. I like the sweet cream butter because it gives it a nice little extra bonus as far as the flavor is concerned. So now that these peppers and onions have cooked down a little bit more, we go ahead and add in our steak. So we've been marinated and been seasoning. Obviously it's shaved steak, so it's clumped up to a little ball from us tossing it around. So let's just mix that around and loosen that back up. You see it starting to loosen back up the way it's supposed to be, so mix it around in with your peppers and onions. And we're going to let that cook until everything starts to come together. You put a lid on it and let it stew for a little while. And then come back and stir it a little bit in a second. Then we'll add everything else. So the steak is starting to get nice and brown, but we're going to make sure we get all of it cooked all the way through. We don't want any red in this particular dish. We want to cook the steak all the way through. All the flavors will go in. Because it is slightly Asian inspired, I was inspired by like when you order Chinese food and they have the pepper steak on the menu. And the way my mother used to make it at the same time. So I'm going to add a little bit more soy sauce. This is fully optional. And then we'll add a little bit of Cholula hot sauce. Just a touch. Just for a little bit of spice, because obviously this is for me. And I'm seasoning it how I like. You season it to your taste based on what you have a preference for on your palate. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white balsamic vinegar. Just to break everything down a little bit more and add a hint of a sweetness. Just stir this a little bit more. And then I'm going to put the lid on and just let it cook. And by the time it's done, all the steak should be loosened up and cooked all the way through. All the peppers and onions should be soft and it'll be ready to eat.